Emily Collins thought her messy divorce from Nathan Brooks was the end of all heartbreak. She had endured the crushing betrayal, the humiliation of gossip among Boston's elite, and the sting of watching her ex-husband flaunt his lavish new lifestyle, always with a glamorous mistress draped on his arm. Months later, a chance encounter inside the glittering foyer of a five-star restaurant was about to unravel everything she thought was finally settled. Because on the very night Nathan strutted in with his mistress at his side, he caught sight of Emily laughing across a table from a powerful CEO. Sparks would fly, old wounds would rip open, and secrets long buried would claw their way back to the surface. Emily Collins had been raised with all the right manners, the best private schools, and every expectation that her life would be picture perfect. Her parents, William and Susan Collins, built a comfortable life in suburban Massachusetts, ensuring Emily never lacked for anything. Ironically, that same privileged upbringing had swept her right into Nathan Brooks's orbit. A charming, fiercely ambitious man from a working-class family who was hell-bent on climbing the social and financial ladder. They first met at a charity gala at the Beacon Hill Club in Boston, an evening swirling with chandeliers and crisp champagne. Nathan was an up-and-coming entrepreneur at the time, brimming with restless ambition. There was an instant spark. Emily found his drive refreshing, a sharp contrast to the entitled attitude she so often encountered in her circle. For his part, Nathan admired her poise and her valuable family connections. They were an unlikely pair, but for a few sweet years, it looked like they were building something real together. Success, however, can be a double-edged sword. Nathan's tech startup soared beyond anything they dared to dream, turning him into a rising star among investors and venture capitalists. He quickly became a millionaire, rubbing shoulders with celebrities and high-profile financiers, always chasing the next big deal. But with more money came more pressure and more temptation. Emily couldn't pinpoint the exact moment their marriage began to fracture, but it started with late-night meetings that spilled into weekend business trips. Over time, Nathan's once warm gaze cooled into polite distance. When whispers of his infidelity first reached Emily's ears, she brushed them off as petty rumors. She wanted to believe Nathan was still the man who once texted her silly jokes from across the room just to say he loved her. But by their 4th anniversary, she couldn't deny the changes any longer. Friends murmured about a mysterious woman spotted in Nathan's luxury car or a pair of outrageously expensive heels found in his penthouse office. Each clue cut deeper, carving out a sense of betrayal that grew impossible to ignore. A year ago, after tearful confrontations and painful truths laid bare, they finally divorced. The legal battle didn't drag on. Nathan offered a generous settlement, as if throwing money at her could wash away his guilt. Bitter and heartbroken, Emily moved back to her parents' place in Massachusetts for a while, nursing her wounds in quiet privacy. The tabloids caught wind of the split, spinning it into yet another fairy tale marriage gone sour. Nathan seemed to relish his return to bachelor life. Paparazzi caught him leaving exclusive Boston lounges, usually with a striking brunette hanging on his arm. Her name, it turned out, was Bella Cruz. An aspiring model from a small town, hungry for a taste of the life Emily had once built beside him. Bella clung to him in every paparazzi photo, her sultry poses a sharp contrast to Emily's more understated elegance. Emily tried to shut out the swirling rumors about Nathan's so-called happiness. Instead, she poured herself into rebuilding her own life. She landed a new job coordinating charity events for a major nonprofit, throwing herself into fundraising and volunteer circles. It gave her a sense of purpose that dulled the raw sting of her failed marriage. Still, even the most successful galas and supportive friends couldn't fully erase the ache that surfaced in her quiet moments. She remembered how she and Nathan used to daydream about traveling the world together, raising a family, launching charities of their own. Now, all she had left was a line of regrets and a white gold wedding band gathering dust at the back of her jewelry box. It was during one of those charity events that she met Daniel Carter, a handsome, self-made CEO who owned a chain of luxury boutique hotels worldwide. Emily was organizing a major fundraiser for an educational outreach program, and Daniel's company had pledged a generous donation. Over weeks of planning, Daniel turned out to be more than just another distant corporate sponsor. He was surprisingly genuine, with a warm smile that softened his sharp suits and boardroom edge. Though Emily was cautious of powerful men after her ordeal with Nathan, Daniel's respectful, patient kindness slowly chipped away at her walls. One evening, after a successful gala, Daniel asked if he could take her to dinner. She hesitated, feeling that old vulnerability tighten in her chest, but there was something about Daniel's quiet sincerity that made her say yes. She promised herself it was just dinner. Just two professionals celebrating a job well done. Yet deep down, Emily couldn't deny a gentle, fragile hope flickering to life. A tiny voice reminding her she still deserved moments that felt easy and kind. She had no idea that this simple dinner would become the backdrop for a clash she never saw coming. Nor did she imagine that her ex-husband and his mistress would be dining under the very same glittering roof that night, setting the scene for a collision none of them could have predicted. High-end restaurants in Boston prided themselves on elegance, but La Belle Maison took luxury to an entirely different level. The restaurant was famous for its gold-leaf ceilings, hand-blown glass chandeliers, and a waitlist that could stretch out for months. Patrons gladly spent thousands on a single meal, savoring each course crafted by a Michelin-starred chef. Nathan Brooks stepped inside with Bella Cruz draped on his arm. He was used to commanding attention in places like this, and tonight was no exception, dressed in a sharp Italian suit that hugged his lean frame just right. He radiated the confidence of a man who had conquered the business world. The hostess, recognizing him immediately as a VIP regular, guided them to a secluded corner table by the expansive window overlooking the Boston Public Garden. Nathan felt a quiet surge of pride as other diners stole glances their way, a living reminder of just how far he'd come. Bella, wearing a figure-hugging black dress that shimmered under the warm lights, took a slow sip of champagne. She kept her eyes fixed on Nathan, fully aware that half the dining room was watching them. This was exactly the glamorous life she'd always dreamed of. Caviar, champagne, and a wealthy man who indulged her every wish. She relished it all, from the maîtrade's hushed tone to the buzz of paparazzi who sometimes lingered near the entrance. As they flipped through the menu and murmured about their upcoming getaway to St. Bart's, Bella tilted her phone for a discreet selfie. Nathan gently placed his hand over hers, cautioning her to keep things subtle. He liked his success flaunted on his own terms, especially after the chaos of his scandalous divorce. Bella pouted but obeyed. She knew the real prize was staying in his orbit, not a fleeting social media splash. Across the dining room, the hostess was guiding Daniel Carter and Emily Collins to an equally coveted table. Daniel carried the quiet certainty of a man who had built an empire brick by brick. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, and Emily moved gracefully beside him in a deep blue gown that flattered her shape without trying too hard. She felt a flutter of excitement mixed with a dash of nerves. Daniel wasn't just her philanthropic collaborator anymore. He was becoming someone she genuinely wanted to know beyond work. The table he had reserved offered a sweeping view of the glittering room. Soft candlelight flickered across polished glassware as they settled in. Emily rested her hands in her lap, steadying herself to stay composed. She had a feeling Daniel's invitation wasn't just about a friendly dinner, but she wasn't sure she was ready for more than that. Their conversation started light, teasing each other about the success of the fundraiser, then drifted to Daniel's plans to grow his hotel brand in Asia. Emily lit up talking about possible charity initiatives in those regions. Her passion was contagious. Daniel found it refreshing compared to the empty socialites he usually met in boardrooms and gala halls. Halfway through their amuse-bouche, Daniel lifted his glass. "To you, Emily," he said warmly, "for reminding me that business can mean more than just profit. You've helped me see how much good we can actually do for education around the world," Daniel said, his voice low but sincere. Emily's cheeks warmed. "You give me too much credit, Daniel. I just connect the right donors to the right causes." Their glasses clinked softly, and for a heartbeat their eyes held, an unspoken acknowledgement that something deeper pulsed beneath their polite collaboration. Emily felt her heart flutter, a sensation she hadn't tasted in years, not since long before her divorce. Yet beneath that gentle excitement, a faint tremor of fear stirred in her chest. What if letting herself feel again only reopened old wounds she'd spent so long stitching closed? Maybe she was ready to let herself feel again. Meanwhile, across the room, trouble was brewing. Bella, scanning the restaurant with the trained sharpness of someone who always knew which way the social winds blew, suddenly stiffened. She leaned closer to Nathan, her red nails brushing his cufflink. "Isn't that your ex-wife over there by the center arrangement?" she murmured, her tone laced with sly curiosity. Nathan's eyes followed Bella's pointed look and froze. There, seated gracefully across from Daniel Carter, was Emily. His ex-wife, radiant in a gown that made half the dining room do a double take, smiling at a man whose net worth made Nathan's tech millions look almost small. A sharp wave of jealousy curled deep in Nathan's gut, coiled tight with a spark of anger and something he hated admitting to himself, fear. He forced a laugh that sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Small world," he said, the words dragging like sandpaper on his tongue. This wasn't some coffee shop or cheap downtown bar. La Belle Maison was a fortress for the city's elite, a place where even a reservation meant you belonged to a rarefied circle. The very last person Nathan wanted to run into tonight was Emily, especially not with someone like Daniel Carter at her side. Bella arched a perfectly manicured brow, her lips curling into a feline grin. "Maybe we should say hello," she purred, her voice dripping fake sweetness. "It's only polite to greet an ex-wife and her friend." Nathan tossed back the last of his champagne, feeling it burn. "We'll see," he muttered, unable to tear his eyes away from Emily's table. He loathed being upstaged, and Daniel Carter's presence made him feel exactly that. Small, replaceable, irrelevant. A part of him burned to storm over, to stake his claim in this tight circle of wealth and status he'd fought so hard to join. But even he knew that confronting them outright could ignite a scene he wouldn't be able to control. As the waitstaff floated around with plates of Wagyu beef and lobster risotto, 2 tables braced themselves, though only one knew it. Emily sat inches away from Nathan, oblivious to the fact that her ex-husband's eyes were boring into her back, fueled by an envy so hot it nearly scorched his veins. Daniel, for his part, remained happily unaware that the CEO of a rival tech startup, and Emily's ex, was plotting them from across the room. In just a few moments, this temple of fine dining would become ground zero for old grudges and new temptations colliding head-on. The night was still young, and the sparks were just waiting to fly. None of them could have seen this coming. Nathan's entire body buzzed with tension. He kept sneaking glances at Emily's table, trying to read just how close she and Daniel Carter really were. Beside him, Bella leaned in every so often, her breath brushing his ear as she dropped petty little barbs meant to stoke the fire. "They look awfully cozy, don't they?" she whispered once, her tone dripping sweet poison. "Or, he must be footing the bill for all those diamonds she's flashing tonight," she added with a pointed glance at the delicate diamond drop earrings, ones Nathan himself had given Emily years ago. Each jab made Nathan's jaw tighten. Part of him wanted to dismiss the jealousy clawing at his gut. He was the one who ended it with Emily, the one who paraded Bella on his arm like a trophy. But watching Emily bask in the warm glow of La Belle Maison, looking more confident than ever, and seated next to a man whose wealth and influence rivaled and maybe even surpassed his own, made something primal twist inside him. After picking at his caviar-topped appetizer long enough, Nathan slammed down his fork. He couldn't sit here and stew any longer. "I'm going to say hello," he said stiffly, pretending to sound casual. "I'd like to keep this civil." Bella's crimson lips twitched with amusement as she swirled her wineglass. "Have fun," she purred, satisfaction glittering in her eyes. "I'll be right here, waiting." A knot of tension coiled in Nathan's chest as he threaded through the maze of linen-draped tables, trying not to look like a man on a mission, though every step felt heavier than the last. In seconds, he was standing at the edge of Daniel and Emily's table. Up close, the sight nearly punched the air from his lungs. Daniel was leaning forward, listening intently, while Emily spoke with an animation Nathan hadn't seen in her in years. Her eyes sparkled, her posture graceful yet relaxed, as if this man across from her made her feel safe. Nathan cleared his throat. Emily's head snapped up. The flash of surprise in her eyes was brief. She recovered fast, letting a polite mask slide into place. "Nathan," she said coolly, tilting her head in acknowledgement, "I didn't expect to run into you here." Daniel, halfway through a laugh, fell quiet. His hazel eyes flicked up to Nathan's face, curiosity sharpening his easy smile. He'd heard vague whispers that Emily's ex had been a big player in Boston's tech scene, but he'd never met Nathan Brooks until now. Daniel extended a hand, unbothered. "Good evening, Daniel Carter." Nathan took it, noting the unyielding grip, a silent sign of a man who didn't shrink for anyone. "Nathan Brooks," he said evenly. "I believe we've both heard each other's names floating around town." Behind the polite exchange, Nathan's thoughts roiled. So this is the man who stepped into my place. Emily drew in a quiet breath, gathering her composure, refusing to let the tension crack her calm. "How have you been, Nathan?" Emily asked, her tone even, silently hoping to keep this exchange from turning into something messy. She'd prayed he'd stay at his table, but deep down, she'd known a confrontation tonight was inevitable. Nathan forced a thin smile. "Busy as ever, growing the business, you know how it is." He let his eyes sweep around the gilded restaurant, as if to remind everyone how comfortably he belonged among such extravagance. Daniel nodded politely, catching the faint bite in Nathan's voice. "We were just celebrating a recent milestone. Emily's been incredible. She spearheaded a campaign that raised a huge sum for some new education programs." Nathan's lips twitched, tightening. He remembered when he and Emily had done charity galas together, back before his company exploded and real generosity was replaced by showy donations for PR headlines. "That's nice," he said flatly. Emily caught that flicker in his eyes. Resentment, that same simmering edge she'd lived with during the final months of their marriage. She braced herself, praying he wouldn't slip in a passive-aggressive jab right here, in front of Daniel and half of Boston's high society. Before he could, Bella materialized behind Nathan, sliding her arm through his with casual possessiveness. She gave Daniel a sugary smile, her eyes glittering with barely hidden glee. "Hi," she said sweetly, offering her hand with practiced elegance. "I'm Bella Cruz, Nathan's companion." She lingered on the word companion, letting it hang in the air just long enough for Emily to catch the dig. Then Bella turned her gaze to Emily, her lips curling in a polite smirk. "And you must be the ex-wife. Such a pleasure to meet you, I've heard so much." Emily stayed composed, though her stomach flipped. She knew Bella from gossip sites, that striking, camera-ready presence, the complete opposite of Emily's more classic poise. "Charmed," Emily said smoothly, forcing civility into every syllable. Daniel sensed the subtle undercurrent instantly. His brow creased as he gently placed a reassuring hand on the small of Emily's back. A protective touch that didn't escape Nathan's notice. "Well, now that everyone's met," Daniel said lightly, trying to diffuse the tension, "why don't you two join us for a moment? It's not every day you bump into familiar faces here at La Belle Maison." Emily nearly choked at the word friends, but managed to keep her polite mask in place. Nathan, spotting a chance to reassert his presence, nodded quickly. "We'd love to." Bella shot Emily a sly, victorious glance, as if she'd just been invited into a private arena where she could flaunt her prize. Reluctantly, Emily shifted her chair to make space. Her pulse hammered in her ears, every nerve sparking with dread about how sideways this could go. Daniel signaled for the waiter to bring extra seats, unknowingly setting the table for a powder keg of clashing pasts, bruised egos, and unresolved temptations. As the staff rearranged the seating, the restaurant's mirrored walls caught the four of them in crisp reflections. Two former lovers, a new flame, and a restless intruder. Bound together by threads of betrayal, rivalry, and an intimacy none of them were ready to unravel. The staff stepped away discreetly, sensing the friction that hovered like a storm cloud. The next words exchanged at that table would ripple through all four of their lives in ways none of them could yet imagine. With Nathan, Emily, Daniel, and Bella gathered around a single candlelit table, La Belle Maison's opulence suddenly felt stifling, like a gilded cage closing in on all of them. Emily sat rigidly, wishing she could vanish into the velvet walls, but when Daniel caught her eye with a gracious smile and signaled the waiter for fresh wine glasses, she knew there was no graceful escape. Getting up now would only pour gasoline on the rumor mill. Bella wasted no time. She leaned in, batting her lashes as if playing to an invisible audience. "This place is just breathtaking," she cooed, her voice dripping with feigned wonder. "Nathan and I come here all the time, don't we, darling?" Nathan gave a tight nod, but his mind was miles away, flicking back and forth between watching Daniel and recalling every moment he and Emily had shared in this same glittering room. His eyes darted over Daniel's tailored suit, his calm confidence, his hands still close to Emily's on the table. Something raw and possessive thudded in Nathan's chest. Trying to cut the tension, Daniel cleared his throat. "I hear the chef is launching a new tasting menu next month. Maybe we should all come back and try it sometime." His eyes lingered on Emily as he said it, his tone warm but carefully neutral. Emily forced a polite smile, giving a small nod, though her insides coiled tighter with each fake-lovey word from Bella. She caught Bella's gaze flicking to Daniel's wristwatch, a rare Swiss piece worth more than most people's annual salary, and she felt a quick twist of annoyance. She's sizing him up, Emily thought grimly. Probably just like she sized up Nathan when he first struck it big. The thought sparked a strange, fleeting stab of pity for Nathan. Did Bella latch onto him the second his stock soared? But the fleeting sympathy did nothing to soften the ache of betrayal that still lingered under her skin. Bella delicately sipped her champagne, then turned her fake coy smile toward Daniel. "So Daniel Carter, right? CEO of Carter International? Hotels everywhere. London, Singapore. I read about it in a travel spread once." Daniel nodded, his expression tightening at the corners. "That's right. And you must be doing well in modeling, from what I've heard." Bella's lashes fluttered theatrically. "Oh well, I dabble in a few campaigns here and there, but mostly I focus on charity work, with Nathan, of course." She paused just long enough for the point to land, like a subtle knife. "I'm where Emily used to be." Emily felt her cheeks flush hot, but she forced herself to stay calm. She would not stoop to Bella's childish digs, no matter how they twisted like a knife in her gut. Under the table, Daniel brushed his fingers lightly over hers, a tiny, protective gesture that spoke more than words. She squeezed his hand back, grateful for the anchor. Nathan caught the motion, and for a second, regret flickered in his eyes. Had he really traded away a woman who had loved him for someone who worshipped the flash of power and status more than the man himself? He pushed the thought aside. He needed to reclaim control of this awkward charade before it unraveled any further. He turned his sharp smile on Daniel. "So, Daniel? So I understand you're expanding into Southeast Asia soon?" Nathan said, aiming for casual conversation, but unable to keep the slight edge out of his voice. Daniel responded with practiced ease, describing the new hotels his company was launching in Singapore and Hong Kong, the community initiatives they were funding for local schools and families, and the challenges of navigating business deals across such diverse cultures. Emily joined in, chiming in with her own experience organizing education-focused events for an NGO in that region. Their back and forth was effortless, their synergy so natural it made Nathan's jaw tighten. Watching Emily speak so animatedly, so sure of herself, tugged at something he hadn't felt in years. A heavy pang of regret knotted in his chest. He'd once been the man at her side, basking in that same light, until he'd smothered it with ambition and neglect. In the early days of their marriage, her idealism and compassion had mesmerized him almost more than her beauty did. But success had changed him, hardened him, and he suspected it had changed her too, though in a way that made her stronger, not colder. Next to him, Bella sensed Nathan drifting and looped her manicured hand through his arm, flashing a coy smile. "Nathan's been traveling a lot too, haven't you, darling?" she purred, voice sugar-sweet for Daniel's benefit. "He's working on opening new offices in Dubai." She flicked her eyes to Daniel's watch, then back to his face, watching for even the slightest hint of envy or approval. Nathan forced a stiff grin, unwilling to betray the way he hated being measured up like a showpiece. "Yes, Dubai. We have some major investors over there." He rattled off a few generic remarks about global growth, but the spark in his words was hollow. Conversation stumbled to an awkward lull, the tension coiling so thick it felt like static clinging to the tablecloth. Then, unexpectedly, the maitre d' approached, a discreet staff member trailing behind. He murmured something quietly about an issue near the entrance. "Paparazzi," drawn by all the recognizable faces tonight. The maitre gave a soft, apologetic smile. "If you'd like, Mr. Carter, Mr. Brooks, we can move you and your guests to a more private lounge. We'd hate for your evening to be disturbed." Emily's pulse jumped. She could already picture tomorrow's tabloid headlines if they were photographed like this, a perfect storm of scandal bait. Daniel caught her look, understanding instantly. "We'd appreciate that," he said smoothly. They rose together, staff discreetly guiding them down a side hallway into a secluded, richly appointed lounge draped in velvet curtains. A grand piano sat in the corner, silent, while mellow jazz hummed through hidden speakers. The softer, low lighting made the room feel even closer, a cocoon for truths none of them really wanted to face. Bella perched herself elegantly on a velvet chaise, crossing her legs in a way that radiated smug contentment at this exclusive detour. Nathan hovered beside her, but couldn't stop glancing at Emily and Daniel, who had settled together on a nearby settee. Fresh flutes of champagne arrived. None of them turned it down. Each sip only sharpened the edges of the secrets humming between them. At last, Daniel let out a quiet chuckle, breaking the thick silence. "Well, this wasn't exactly on tonight's agenda." Daniel managed a small smile at Emily, who gave him a subtle shrug in return. She wanted nothing more than to melt into the velvet cushions, but deep inside she held tight to an unspoken resolve. She would not let Nathan or Bella see her flinch. Bella, never one to let silence win, leaned forward with that syrupy voice of hers. "I remember reading about your divorce settlement, Emily. Very hush-hush, wasn't it? But you know how these things leak eventually." She aimed her words at Daniel, as if dangling an invitation to pry deeper. Emily's shoulders stiffened, fury bubbling just beneath her calm exterior. Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's personal, Miss Cruz," he said evenly, the steel in his tone unmistakable. "And I don't think any of us need to indulge in gossip tonight." Bella's lips spread into a slow feline grin. "Of course. My apologies." The sweetness in her voice was so fake it made Emily's teeth ache. Nathan felt a sour twist of guilt in his gut. How did I let this petty, shallow circus become my life? But his pride wouldn't let him expose that regret in front of Daniel and Emily, at least not yet. So he pivoted, grasping for neutral ground. "So, Daniel, how do you manage it all? Running an empire, staying hands-on with charity work. Must be a balancing act." Daniel answered smoothly, describing how he trusted his senior teams, stayed in close touch with each board he chaired, and carved out personal time whenever he could. His tone was genuine, his passion for using business as a force for good, unmistakable. Emily listened, caught in the bittersweet ache of recognizing how easily they connected. Purpose, work, giving back. She flicked a glance at Nathan, remembering how once upon a time they'd spun the same dream together. Success not just for profit's sake, but to make an actual difference. Now that vision lay in shards between them, replaced by this awkward dance of thinly veiled rivalry. The private lounge felt more suffocating than ever, its velvet walls pressing close around secrets and quiet resentment. They sipped their champagne in strained sips, each bubble sharpening regrets, insecurities, and bruised pride. Somewhere outside, camera flashes flickered, snatching pieces of the night to feed the tabloids by morning. Determined not to be overshadowed, Bella leaned forward again, peppering Daniel with questions about his charity foundations. She slipped in vague comments about her own philanthropic passions, though every time Daniel gently asked for details, she fumbled and pivoted to safer ground. Nathan watched it all, suddenly aware of how forced Bella's charm felt next to the easy, genuine energy between Emily and Daniel. The contrast stung. Finally, Daniel rose, offering Emily a polite nod and a soft smile. "I'm going to speak to the maitre, make sure we're not disturbed again. Care to join me?" He wanted to give her an escape hatch, a breath of fresh air outside this suffocating farce. "Absolutely," Emily said, her relief barely hidden as she stood. They slipped out, leaving Nathan and Bella alone on the plush velvet settee. The silence between them was like wet cement, thick, heavy, impossible to ignore. Bella fiddled with her phone, clearly weighing whether this moment called for a perfectly staged selfie to flaunt online. Nathan stared past her, his thoughts spiraling around a single unwelcome truth. He didn't want to be the man sitting beside a woman who saw him as nothing more than a ticket to luxury and a stepping stone to her next 15 minutes of fame. Yet a part of Nathan knew he had chosen this chaos himself, drawn to the shallow thrill when his marriage was cracking at the seams. Without thinking, he reached out and lowered Bella's phone. "That's enough pictures," he muttered. A flash of annoyance crossed Bella's face, but she dropped her arm. "I just wanted one quick shot." "I said enough." Nathan's tone cut sharper than he meant it to. Even he flinched at the harshness in his voice. He exhaled slowly, trying to reel it back in. "Sorry, it's just complicated." Bella shifted closer, laying a manicured hand on his arm. "Nathan," she said softly, her voice syrupy with faux concern, "is seeing Emily with that CEO messing with your head?" He stiffened at her bluntness, but Bella pressed on. "Look, I get it. Exes can screw with your head, especially when they're doing better than you thought they would." Her eyes glittered with an edge. "But hey, you're still successful, and I'm here. Don't let some old flame overshadow what we have." Her words, meant to soothe, only twisted the knot in Nathan's chest tighter. "What do we have?" he wondered bitterly. Bella liked the parties, the trips, the glittering lifestyle, but did she give a damn about him, the man behind the bank account? His mind drifted back to Emily, how she'd believed in him before any investor did, how she'd stood by him when he was just another untested entrepreneur. A wave of guilt and longing nearly made him choke. He brushed Bella's hand away, not unkindly. "Let's not get into this now. They'll be back soon." He forced a thin smile, but his eyes gave him away. Conflicted, restless, cracked wide open in ways Bella couldn't quite read. She masked her irritation behind a pretty, frozen grin. She wouldn't let her place beside Nathan slip, not without a fight. Across the lounge, Daniel and Emily spoke quietly with the maitre d'. While Daniel handled the details about privacy and press, Emily's eyes flicked back to the velvet settee, worry tightening her chest. Leaving Nathan and Bella alone felt like feeding kindling to a flame. Daniel noticed her distracted look. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. She managed a tight smile. "I'm fine. I just didn't expect to spend tonight in a private lounge with my ex-husband and his +1. Daniel chuckled softly, sympathetic. "That's a lot for anyone. If you want, I can get us out of here. No fuss." Emily hesitated. She wanted to run, but a stubborn piece of her wanted to face it all head-on too. Maybe this awkward night was the final knot she had to untangle to really move forward. "No," she said quietly, resolve settling in her shoulders. "Let's just end this gracefully and go." Daniel's eyes warmed. "You're braver than you think, you know that?" he murmured. A tiny smile tugged at her lips. She drew a breath for courage. When they returned to the lounge, Nathan sat ramrod straight next to Bella, the tension between them visible in every stiff line of his posture. Emily cleared her throat, her voice steady. "I think Daniel and I are going to call it a night. We have an early event tomorrow." Nathan gave a short nod, relief flickering across his face, tangled with an odd, hollow disappointment he couldn't name. Bella's lips curved into a sly pout, her eyes sweeping over Emily's gown like a weapon. "Aw, shame. The night's still young. Sure you don't want to stay? Catch up some more?" Her tone dripped sugar and venom all at once. Daniel stepped in smoothly, his smile polite but edged with quiet authority. "Emily's charity schedule keeps her busy. We'd hate to overstay," Daniel said calmly, his tone a polite but unmistakable signal that the evening was done. He turned to Nathan, extending a steady hand. "It was interesting to meet you. Best of luck with your expansion plans." Nathan forced a tight nod and a rehearsed smile. "Yes, likewise. Maybe we'll cross paths again." The words tasted hollow, but he clung to them to salvage some shred of dignity. Emily, not trusting her voice to hold if she said too much, simply turned to Bella with a cool, practiced smile. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," she said, each syllable perfectly poised. Bella flashed a sugary grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, we will." With that, Daniel placed a gentle hand at the small of Emily's back, guiding her through the velvet drapes. A discreet staff member led them down a quiet hallway and out a private exit, well away from the waiting cameras. Inside the elevator, Emily exhaled a shaky sigh she'd been holding since the first awkward toast. Daniel studied her profile, his expression soft with respect. "You're handling all this with remarkable grace," he murmured. "I know it's not easy." She gave him a tired half-smile. "Thank you, and thank you for stepping in when you did. If you hadn't been there, I might have lost my temper back there." A quiet understanding flickered between them. An unspoken truth that Daniel was more than a business partner or a convenient dinner date. He was quickly becoming a steady presence she could trust as she stitched her life back together. Meanwhile, back in the lounge, Nathan waved a waiter over and ordered a stiff drink. Bella, ever attentive to appearances, rubbed his shoulder like a dutiful companion, but her touch felt empty. Nathan stared at the spot where Emily had disappeared, a restless churn of regret and jealousy rattling in his chest. He could still picture her calm strength, her quiet dignity, things he had once taken for granted. Bella leaned close, her voice syrupy soft. "Don't dwell on your ex. We have a flight to St. Bart's soon, remember? Let's focus on us." Nathan forced himself to tear his eyes from the empty doorway, plastering on a half-smile. "Yeah, us." But deep down, Emily's steady gaze lingered like a phantom, a reminder of the love and loyalty he'd carelessly lost, and of the cracks he'd let spread through a marriage once full of promise. As the low hum of jazz floated back through the lounge, two very different pairs sat with their truths. One couple stepped out into the Boston night, wrapped in the warmth of second chances and a city brimming with new beginnings. The other stayed behind in a velvet cage, still clinging to glittering illusions, while wondering if all that shimmered had already started to lose its shine. Outside, camera flashes popped, and the tabloids wasted no time. By the next morning, social media was buzzing with speculation about the unusual four-way encounter at La Belle Maison. Grainy shots of Daniel Carter discreetly guiding Emily Collins through a side exit circulated alongside clips of Nathan Brooks and Bella Cruz lingering behind in the plush lounge. Gossip blogs spun their own versions. Wealthy tech mogul faces awkward run-in with ex-wife and hotel tycoon, or Bella Cruz's icy glare, jealous of CEO's flirtation with the former Mrs. Brooks. Emily woke to a phone full of messages, some friends offering sympathy, others fishing for juicy details. She answered every nosy text with the same calm reply. It was a coincidence. Everyone had been civil, and there was nothing more to say. But deep down, she could still feel the tension humming like static under her skin. She grabbed a mug of coffee and scrolled past the headlines, determined not to let the media circus pull her back into old wounds. Today was important. She was due at Daniel's corporate offices to finalize a major philanthropic partnership. Real work that mattered. Passing a hallway mirror on her way out, she tucked a stray hair behind her ear and drew a steady breath. No more being defined by the past, she told her reflection firmly, her eyes steady despite the ache. Last night stays in last night, she told herself. Today is about moving forward. An hour later, she stepped into Carter International Tower, a gleaming skyscraper that embodied Daniel's global empire. The executive floor gleamed with marble and subtle art pieces chosen for quiet elegance rather than showy wealth. A polished assistant escorted her to Daniel's private conference room. She braced for a stiff boardroom tone, but Daniel greeted her with a warm smile that instantly grounded her. "Emily, thanks for coming. Let's sit." They dove into the plans for the scholarship fund, allocation of resources, rollout timelines, publicity strategies. It was practical, but beneath the neat bullet points and funding charts, a softer current pulsed in the air between them. Eventually, Daniel leaned back, his expression shifting from CEO to concerned friend. "How are you holding up? I hope the press hasn't made your morning too miserable." Emily exhaled a soft sigh. "The tabloids love spinning fairy tales, but I'm fine. Really, I just appreciate you being there. Last night could have gone sideways fast if you hadn't been." Daniel's eyes gentled. "You know you can always count on me. I'm sorry you had to face that, him. It's never simple, is it?" She gave a quiet nod. "I'm lucky I had a real friend beside me." The word friend lingered in the air like a question neither of them want to pin down. Yet, Daniel's gaze flickered, warm but uncertain. Emily felt her pulse flutter, but forced her thoughts back to the spreadsheets. She needed space to sort out what this connection really meant. Across town, Nathan slouched in his penthouse, ignoring the mountain of emails stacked up in his inbox. He was supposed to fly to St. Bart's with Bella in 3 days, but the trip felt pointless now. All he could see was Emily's graceful exit, Daniel's steady hand at the small of her back, proof that she was moving on while he remained stuck in a life that glittered more on the outside than it ever did on the inside. She really looked happy. Nathan thought, the truth punching him in the gut harder than he cared to admit. Across the living room, Bella flitted around like a queen bee, barking instructions at the house staff about which outfits to pack for their upcoming island escape. Every so often she paused, trying to pull Nathan back into her world. What do you think? This bathing suit, or should I bring the diamond set you gave me last month? He tossed her vague, half-hearted replies, which only deepened the dissatisfied pout on her lips. Bella could sense his mind was miles away from any sun-soaked beaches. Finally, she sank onto the couch beside him, arms crossed tight over her designer blouse. Nathan, you've been impossible ever since that dinner at La Belle Maison. Is this about Emily? Are you jealous or something? His first instinct was to snap back. I'm not jealous, he said stiffly. But even as the words left his mouth, a quiet voice in his head mocked him for lying. Yes, he envied Daniel's unstoppable empire. But worse was the ache of seeing Emily so effortlessly alive beside a man who actually deserved her trust. I just hate how the press spins everything, he added weakly. Bella huffed, rolling her eyes. Let them gossip. We're about to fly off to paradise. Focus on that. She flipped her hair over one shoulder with practiced drama. I'm going to run to Newbury Street for some last-minute shopping. You coming? Nathan shook his head, faking a glance at his laptop. I have calls. Go ahead. Annoyed but unwilling to waste her spree, Bella strutted out, heels clicking like gunshots against the marble floor. Left alone, Nathan stared at the silent room and thought about the irony of it all. He had thrown away a woman who had loved him completely, just to chase a life that looked glitzy in photos, but felt emptier than any cheap suit. He remembered late-night talks with Emily about using their success for something bigger than themselves. He couldn't recall a single time Bella had talked about charity unless it made her look good on social media. On impulse, Nathan grabbed his phone and scrolled through old contacts until he landed on a name he hadn't dialed since the divorce, Jessica Morgan. A mutual friend, one who had stayed loyal to Emily when everything blew apart. Jessica never sugarcoated anything. If he needed perspective, she'd give it, blunt and honest, whether or not it hurt. He hovered for a moment, then tapped out a quick message. Hey Jess, it's Nathan. I know it's been a while. Can we talk? Seconds dragged. He nearly locked the screen in defeat when the reply pinged back. This is unexpected. You okay? Nathan let out a shaky exhale, typing back. Not really. Need some perspective. The answer came quick and clear. Meet me at the Hudson Cafe. 4 p.m. tomorrow. Nathan set the phone down, an uneasy swirl of relief and dread twisting in his gut. Jessica wouldn't coddle him. She'd tell him exactly what he didn't want to hear. And maybe that's exactly what he deserved. Nathan wanted clarity about his feelings for Emily, about what he really had with Bella. Something had to change, or he knew he'd drown in regret. He dragged himself to the bedroom window and stared out at the Boston skyline he'd once found so electrifying. Now, each glittering high-rise seemed to taunt him. All this success, and yet an emptiness nothing could mask. As the hours crawled by, one unshakable truth pressed against his ribs. He might have let something priceless slip through his fingers, and it might be too late to fix it. The next afternoon, Nathan stepped into the Hudson Cafe. A warm, bustling spot near the river where young professionals perched over laptops and foamy lattes. He scanned the corner booths until he spotted Jessica Morgan, leafing through a magazine, her wavy brown hair framing a face set in a look that was neither friendly nor hostile, just cautious. Nathan slid into the seat across from her. The smell of roasted coffee calmed him, but only slightly. Jessica set aside her magazine, folded her arms, and got straight to it. You said you needed perspective, so talk. He rubbed his temples, fumbling for the words. I ran into Emily last night at La Belle Maison. She was with Daniel Carter. He described the uncomfortable tension, the strained small talk, and the gnawing jealousy he hadn't expected to feel. Jealousy that had stuck to him like wet cement ever since. Jessica's eyebrows arched, her skepticism clear. Nathan, you ended that marriage. If she's moved on, that's her right. She owes you nothing. I know, he said quickly, wincing at how pathetic he sounded. I want her to be happy, Jess. I do. But seeing her with him, seeing how natural it looked, made me realize I didn't value what I had with her. Not enough. Jessica's gaze sharpened to a knife's edge. And now that she's with a man who's arguably more successful and more philanthropic than you, it bruises your ego a little, huh? The truth hit like a slap. Nathan's shoulders sagged. Yeah, maybe, but it's not just that. Emily was never a trophy I lost. She was real. We had something deeper, and I'm terrified I let it rot without even fighting for it. Jessica leaned back, studying him in silence for a beat. Then she dropped the real question. Okay, so what about Bella? He paused, swallowing hard. She's fun, I guess, but it's all surface. Parties, gifts, vacations. She doesn't care about what I care about. I don't see her wanting to build anything real, at least not with me. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I want that with her either. If I love her, or if I just hate the idea of being alone. Nathan's voice dropped to a rough whisper. Jessica let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Sounds like a recipe for another disaster. Nathan, you know I stuck by Emily after the divorce because I saw how broken she was. She deserved so much better. And you? You were too busy playing the shiny new millionaire to see the wreckage you left behind. Nathan's throat constricted. I know, but do you think... Is it even possible to fix this? She's with Daniel Carter now. They're good together. I don't want to blow up her happiness. Jessica's expression softened just a fraction as she took a slow sip of her latte. Emily's a grown woman. She's done with heartbreak, and I know Daniel. He respects her, treats her well. So if you're thinking about crawling back, you'd better accept the fact that she might turn you down flat. She might choose Daniel. A sick twist of dread coiled in Nathan's gut. So, you're saying I should just move on? I'm saying figure out what you actually want, and whether you're prepared to earn her trust back. If that's even possible. And let's be clear. She leaned in, eyes fierce. She owes you nothing. If you're looking for a quick feel-good reunion to soothe your bruised ego, do everyone a favor. Stay out of her life and let her find her peace. Nathan's shoulders sagged under the truth. Gratitude and shame tangled inside him. This is why I needed to hear it from you. You're right. It's not just ego. I regret letting all the success blind me to what really mattered. But I don't want to keep being the villain in her story. Jessica's eyes softened again, despite the steel in her voice. Then talk to her. Apologize. Expect nothing. If there's any chance for a new chapter, it starts with honesty, not excuses. They sat another half hour, peeling back old wounds and bluntly weighing his chances. Jessica pulling no punches. When she finally slid out of the booth, she left him with one last warning. And don't forget, Daniel's not some fling. He's the real deal. He can give Emily everything she once dreamed about with you, without all the drama. Her words hit like bricks, but also cleared something cloudy in Nathan's chest. After Jessica left, Nathan lingered in the cafe, staring at the swirl of foam in his untouched coffee. Then, with trembling resolve, he pulled out his phone and fired off a message to his assistant. Cancel the St. Bart's trip with Bella. No more tropical distractions. If he was going to face the mess he'd made, he needed to stop hiding behind beaches and parties. How Bella would react, anger, manipulation, that was tomorrow's storm to weather. First, he needed to figure out how to reach Emily. A simple coffee invite, maybe, or a quiet, neutral place where they could talk alone. He didn't kid himself. One conversation wouldn't fix years of mistakes, but it might be a beginning, whether for redemption or, at the very least, real closure. As he stepped out into the crisp Boston air, the clang of cafe doors closing behind him, a faint but unfamiliar feeling settled in his bones. Clarity. Hard-won, overdue, but finally, his. The city's constant hum felt less suffocating today, more like a living symphony of second chances. Nathan finally understood that real success wasn't measured by having the best table at La Belle Maison or the flashiest penthouse suite. It was about building something meaningful, living honestly, and maybe, just maybe, finding a love that could survive long after the novelty of money faded. Nathan stared down at his phone, his thumb hovering over the simple message he'd just typed. Emily, it's Nathan. Could we meet for coffee, just to talk? He froze, memories flooding back. Emily at La Belle Maison, poised and radiant beside Daniel Carter, her warmth and laughter reminding him exactly what he'd lost. Jealousy and regret tangled in his gut. But if he wanted closure, real forgiveness, he had to start somewhere. He hit send. To his surprise, her reply arrived within minutes. When and where? Relief mingled with dread as he typed back suggesting Westside Park the next afternoon. She agreed, her tone short, calm, revealing nothing of what she truly felt. That night, sleep refused to come. Hope and fear wrestled in his mind until dawn. The next day, sunlight painted Westside Park in gold. Families sprawled across picnic blankets, kids squealed near the playground, joggers looped around the pond's edge. Nathan chose a weathered bench near the fountain, the spray catching in the breeze, his untouched latte trembling in his hand. Every few seconds he scanned the path. Then he saw her. Emily, in a simple blouse and jeans, hair caught in the wind, radiating a quiet strength that made his chest ache. "Thank you for coming," he said softly when she reached him. She sat down, leaving a polite space between them. "I'm curious why you wanted this," she replied, her voice calm but guarded. Nathan inhaled, gathering courage he hadn't found in years. He thought of every moment he'd buried, regrets piled up like bricks on his chest. "I needed to say sorry. For real this time." He began. "I hurt you. I let success eat me alive, and took what we had for granted. I know I can't undo that." Emily's gaze drifted to the fountain, its gentle splash the only sound filling the silence between them. "I appreciate you saying that," she said after a moment, her fingers brushing the rim of her coffee cup. "But an apology doesn't erase everything." "I know," Nathan nodded quickly. "I don't expect you to forget it, or to give me another chance. I can't keep pretending I'm fine with how we ended. Seeing you the other night, it woke me up." The hush between them deepened. Emily studied his face. This man she'd once believed in more than anything. She remembered the nights they'd sat up dreaming big dreams about changing the world together, and how one day all those dreams were crushed under the weight of his unchecked ambition. She turned back to him, her voice steady. "I'm not the same person I was back then, Nathan," she said softly, her words careful but steady. "I've built a new life, Nathan, working with charities and, well, connecting with Daniel." A flicker of jealousy passed over Nathan's features, but he managed a small, genuine smile. "He seems like a good man. I really do want you to be happy." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly, trying to gauge how much of that she could trust. "So, why now, Nathan? Why reach out now?" He blew out a shaky breath, wrestling with words he'd buried too long. "Because I ended things with Bella. I woke up one day and realized I'd filled my world with shallow distractions. People, parties, stuff that didn't mean anything. I was surrounded by people, but I'd never been lonelier." He looked away, voice roughening. "Seeing you at Belle Maison, seeing how alive and focused you are, it reminded me who I should have been, how far I drifted from the man you once believed in." A knot of mixed emotion twisted in Emily's chest, compassion, exhaustion, and a ghost of old grief. She cleared her throat. A part of her ached unexpectedly, seeing him so raw. She'd loved him so fiercely once, and for a heartbeat she wondered if a piece of that girl still lived inside her. Bruised but wiser now. "Nathan, I'm glad you're seeing this now. But it doesn't erase what happened. We can't just act like that heartbreak didn't exist." "I know," he said quickly, pain flickering in his eyes. "I'm not asking you to. I needed to say this face to face, to own it, and to tell you how much I admire what you've become. If there's any way I can support your causes, I want to, even if we're never anything again." Her voice trembled, honest and raw. "Thank you. That means more than you think." They sat there a moment, silence holding them gently while the fountain splashed behind them and distant laughter floated on the breeze. Finally, Emily spoke. "I accept your apology, but I'm moving forward, Nathan. With or without Daniel, I know how to stand on my own now, and I hope you find your own way too." He nodded, eyes glassy with unshed tears. "That's all I wanted, to say it out loud. Thank you for listening." They rose from the bench, paper cups still full, forgotten. Emily gave him a small, wistful smile. "Take care of yourself, Nathan." He lifted a hand in a hesitant wave before turning away, disappearing into the slow-moving crowd. She watched him go, torn between relief and the soft ache of nostalgia. The fountain's spray caught the sun in tiny rainbows as she exhaled, her heart lighter than it had felt in years. Maybe at last, they both had the closure they'd needed. And maybe finally, she was free to embrace whatever came next. Weeks slipped by, and the buzz about the dramatic run-in at Belle Maison faded from Boston's gossip mill. Emily Collins threw herself deeper into her work at the NGO, orchestrating a high-profile charity gala that promised record-breaking donations for youth education. Every morning she woke up certain of who she was. No longer Nathan Brooks' ex-wife, but a capable, respected force in the city's philanthropic circles. She rarely thought about that coffee at Westside Park, though sometimes, in quiet moments, the memory drifted in. Nathan's apology, his fragile honesty. It had untied something knotted tight inside her for too long. He wasn't a ghost anymore, not a weight on her shoulders. She was free to look ahead without flinching at the past. And Daniel Carter's steady presence only deepened. Together, they continued launching programs and fundraisers. Each conversation, each late-night planning session, peeling back another layer of trust and warmth between them. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt her future was wide open, untangled, unburdened, and hers alone to define. He was wealthy, yes, but more than that, Daniel was steady, principled, and genuinely kind. Whenever Emily felt buried under event logistics or late-night spreadsheets, he was there with practical advice or a gentle, grounding hand on her shoulder. Little by little, the line between their professional partnership and something warmer blurred into something neither of them rushed to define, but neither denied either. The night of the charity gala finally arrived. Held in the glittering ballroom of a historic Boston hotel, the event pulsed with energy. Philanthropists, celebrities, and key community leaders mingled under crystal chandeliers. Emily wore a midnight blue gown, her hair swept back in a soft, elegant updo. She moved through the crowd with calm authority, checking every detail. The silent auction items, the speeches, the flow of the dinner courses. On stage, she introduced Daniel for his keynote address about the power of strategic giving. His words struck a chord with the audience. A clear reminder that wealth, when used intentionally, could change lives far beyond a single ballroom. When the last speech ended and the band struck up a softer tune, Daniel found Emily near the back, standing by a tall window that framed the sparkling city skyline. He gently guided her into a quieter alcove. "You did an incredible job tonight," he said, his voice warm with pride. "We didn't just meet the goal, we shattered it." She let out a shaky laugh, the rush of adrenaline still buzzing through her. "I'm relieved, and so happy. Thank you, Daniel. Without your hotel group sponsorship, we could never have pulled this off at this scale." He smiled, stepping a little closer. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you. When this all settles down, would you let me take you to dinner? A real dinner. No conference calls, no charity spreadsheets, just you and me." His hazel eyes held none of Nathan's old showmanship, just earnest hope that made her heart flutter in a way she hadn't felt in so long. Emily felt warmth rise to her cheeks. After her divorce, she'd sworn off anything more complicated than work and friendship. But Daniel wasn't Nathan. He never made her feel like a prop in his success story. He made her feel seen. She nodded slowly, a shy smile breaking through her exhaustion. "I'd like that. Very much." They both laughed, quiet and genuine. The moment wrapped around them, soft and full of possibility. For the first time, Emily let herself believe she might be ready for something more than just surviving her past. Meanwhile, across the city, Nathan Brooks stood outside a modest community center on the edge of South Boston. He'd quietly funded a new computer lab and science kits for under-resourced kids, a cause he and Emily had once dreamed about back when big dreams still held them together. Now, alone but more honest than he'd ever been, he watched the kids race from table to table, wide-eyed at the shiny new screens and boxes of experiments. The sight tugged a rare, genuine smile from him, one untouched by PR cameras or social media posts. He wondered if Emily would ever hear about this. A part of him hoped she might. Not for praise, but because maybe, in some corner of her mind, she'd know he was trying, piece by piece, to become the man he should have been. Later that night, Nathan returned to his penthouse. It was quiet, no party chatter, no shallow laughter echoing off marble floors. Just silence. And, strangely, the comforting weight of knowing that redemption didn't come all at once. But it was a start. He prepared a simple dinner alone, savoring the unfamiliar quiet and reflecting on how sharply his priorities had changed. Bella Cruz was long gone, off chasing her next glittering stage, and good riddance. Nathan realized maybe solitude wasn't such a curse after all. not if he filled it with purpose. Volunteer work, honest conversations with a therapist, and slowly rebuilding real friendships not built on status. 1 month after the gala, Emily and Daniel sat tucked into a cozy corner of a small hidden French bistro on a quiet Boston street. Unlike glittering hotel ballrooms, this place had no lurking paparazzi, no gilded decor, just warm lighting and exquisite food. Over laughter and small confessions, they uncovered how deeply their values aligned, from philanthropy to simple joys like traveling and old books shared over glasses of wine. When they finally stepped outside, hand in hand, the moonlight felt like a quiet blessing. Emily lifted her eyes to the sky, thinking back to heartbreaks she'd once believed were too deep to ever heal. But here, under the gentle glow of city lights, she knew she was no longer defined by her past. She had carved out something new, built on mutual respect, purpose, and the intoxicating hope that this time, love might actually last. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love lost, trust broken, and the rediscovery of what truly matters. Emily's story reminds us that heartbreak doesn't have to be the end. It can be the catalyst for growth and a life richer than anything money alone can buy. True wealth is found in how we care, how we give back, and who we choose to stand beside us when the noise fades. Even when the past collides unexpectedly with the present, like that unforgettable night at La Belle Maison, we always have the power to choose our future. If you were moved by Emily, Nathan, and Daniel's story, please hit like to show your support, share this video with anyone who loves heartfelt, dramatic tales, and subscribe to our channel for more stories exploring love, ambition, and the road to redemption. Your engagement keeps our stories alive. Thank you for watching, and we can't wait to share more moving drama with you soon.